Alright, so this is a little video about historical sources. I'm going to go ahead and click on historical sources. We are going to be talking about the gospel of wealth in quotes versus socialism. So I click on that button and it brings up the module. There's a video on Carnegie and Steele. There's the primary source of Andrew Carnegie's Gospel of Wealth, where he sort of lays out what he thinks the job of wealthy individuals is vis-a-vis poor people. Then there's a video about Eugene Debs. He is the anti-Carnegie. He's the socialist. He's the working man. He is the voice of labor unions, and later on he becomes involved with the IWW, which is a kind of more radical version of a labor union, International Workers of the World. Yeah, we're going to not really talk about them too much in this class, but they're a part of this story. He's got an article, or I should say we have an article from Debs, What Can We Do for the Working People? Another article from Debs on the crimes of Carnegie, and then finally a secondary source, Ray Ginger's The Bending Cross. It's written in 1947, so it's a pretty old secondary source, but it directly addresses Carnegie and Debs. So what do we have? We have a secondary source, a video about Carnegie, sort of a happy celebratory version, Carnegie and Steele, and how it's important for America. We have a primary source written by Andrew Carnegie talking about his view of the world. We have another secondary source video, Eugene Debs. Then we have this primary source from Eugene Debs talking about what the working man should be doing for himself, really, and then he talks about democracy mostly. All right, another Debs primary source, a secondary source that's not a video but a book, and then we have this quiz that you guys need to take when you're all said and done with this. So how do you navigate through? Pretty easy. You hit next. It brings up, whoa, that's not how it's supposed to happen. How about next up here? No, that's not how it's supposed to happen. Oh, I know. Okay, I got it now. So you have to click on the first Carnegie and Steele, and then when you hit next. So if you click on that, the video, it's about 5 minutes long.
By the early 20th century, new urban megacities around America are bursting to the seams and look to expand in a new direction.
With Steele. Okay, you get the idea. This is the gospel of wealth. What he says here is, this is the problem of our age. It's only been the last little 100 years that we've had this problem. He makes some crazy statements about the Sioux. And then finally he goes down and says, whoops, where are we? He says, don't really give it to the poor. The poor don't know what to do with it. So we should be able to help those who help themselves. That's what you should do with the poor. You should help them help themselves. So what does he want people to do? Build parks, build recreation, lasting good, build libraries. He doesn't want them to have higher wages, note. He says he wants them to have the ability to help themselves. Alright, here's a video on Eugene Debs. We won't watch much of it. Oh, by the way, he gets thrown in prison during World War I, and he runs as president from prison. He's the only person to ever run as a federal inmate.
Eugene Debs was a union organizer, social activist, and politician in the early part of the 20th century. We traveled to his former home turned museum in Terre Haute, Indiana, and sat down with Dr. Charles King, professor of sociology emeritus at Indiana State University, to discuss the life of Eugene Debs.
Eugene Debs was a person who had, in a way, you could almost say, two careers, although they overlapped considerably. He started out as a labor leader. This was in the early days of organized labor in the United States, and long before they had any kind of legal protections.
Okay, well, you get enough of that. It's kind of a slow video, but it does have good insight on Debs and how he changes from a labor leader to a political candidate for the Socialist Party. This is a nice article. This is back when Debs is the editor of the Locomotive Fireman's magazine. He was a railroad union organizer. Before that, he was a railroad painter. And interesting in this, he talks about slavery a lot. Remember, the country had just freed the slaves in the Civil War, and so we don't want to have our workers in the North slaving under similar conditions. And what he says, ultimately, what can the working men do for themselves? They need to vote. They need to educate. They need to improve. And here, he kind of sounds like Carnegie a little bit, right? So let's move on, because here Debs is a little bit more caustic regarding Carnegie. He says, and I'm going to jump to the very end, he says, I'm sorry, I skipped it too far. Hold on. Okay. Will the working man of this country accept any gift from the hands of Andrew Carnegie, red with blood from their slain comrades? He's talking about the Homestead strike here. But basically he says, don't accept Carnegie's libraries, don't accept his charity, because he kills working people and he doesn't give them an honest day's wage. In 1890, Debs is talking about voting in the democratic process. By 1901, he's changed his tune a little bit, and he's a little bit more, what do you want to say? He's less hopeful that democracy can change things, although he still is a socialist candidate. All right, and then finally, this is a secondary source to try and help you figure out a little bit more about Eugene Debs and Andrew Carnegie. Historians used written documents to understand the past, and you guys are going to use written documents to understand the past in this class. Alright, let me know if you have any questions about this module. Hopefully it goes fairly well together and it makes sense. With that, I'll let you take your quiz.